There is a part of you that you spent your whole life trying to hide. The shadow, where your fears, wounds, and forgotten desires lie in silence. But as Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Tonight, as the world outside sinks into stillness, it is time to listen to the deepest voice within you. No more masks, no more roles to play, only you and the soul that has long been waiting to be heard. The hour ahead will not teach you how to live better or become someone. Instead, it will lead you home to the place where darkness and light merge, where the mind stops fighting and begins to rest. Close your eyes, let your breath soften, and allow Jung to guide you through the garden of the unconscious, a place you do not need to understand, only to feel. Because sometimes, to awaken, one must first dare to fall peacefully asleep. You are lying in bed. The room grows dim, with only a soft light spilling from a small lamp. Perhaps today, you've tried your best to keep everything the same. A relationship, a job, a feeling, or simply the image you see in the mirror. But the world, no matter how tightly you hold on, keeps flowing like a river. And perhaps the greatest irony of being human is this: we fear losing the very things that nature never intended to last forever. Carl Gustav Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. There is no awakening without passing through the pain of loss. We only truly awaken when we accept that everything around us, including ourselves, is slowly melting, reshaping, and returning to another cycle." Imagine a stone atop a mountain, solid, stoic, seemingly eternal. Yet the wind still blows, the rain still falls, and the tiny grains of time silently grind it down over millennia. The river at the mountain's foot never holds the same form. It bends, shifts, and finds new paths with every rainy season. Even the star shining above, though radiant, carries within it nuclear fires that are slowly dying. It will fade, flare one last time, and then dissolve into stardust. So too, the things you believed would last forever, love, youth, dreams, or memories, are merely stars within the universe of your soul. They once burned bright, they once illuminated your path, and one day they too will fade, making room for new stars to be born. The ancients said, "You can't step into the same river twice." And Jung, both a psychoanalyst and philosopher, would add, "What you resist persists." The more we cling, the more we fear change. The tighter those fears chain us. Perhaps you hold on to a love long withered, only because you fear being alone. Perhaps you cling to an old version of yourself, afraid others won't love you if you change. But light, like life itself, is beautiful only when it's allowed to move, to burn, and to fade in its own time. Let me tell you a story. There was once a man who kept a single candle burning. Each time it neared its end, he added more wax, trimmed the wick, and refused to let it die. Years passed, and he forgot why he lit it in the first place. Light was meant to guide his way, not to exist forever in a locked room. One day, exhausted, he blew it out. And in that instant of darkness, he realized the light had never disappeared. It had merely returned to where it began. Jung once emphasized, "In all chaos there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order." Change does not destroy you. It is quietly recreating you more wisely than you imagine. Think of yourself. You are no longer who you were a year ago. Your cells have renewed. Your habits have shifted. Your emotions have deepened. Even your soul has been growing in its own quiet way. Yet we still measure ourselves by stability, when life itself was born to transform. Carl Jung believed that every true awakening begins when we dare to face disintegration without fear. Because awakening isn't about controlling change, it's about learning to flow with it. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The greatest privilege of life is to become yourself. And to do that, you must be willing to shed every old skin, every self you once thought was unshakable. As you lie here, in the stillness of night, let your mind soften. You don't need to hold on to today, nor grasp tomorrow. Just take a deep breath and exhale, letting everything flow away. You are not losing anything. You are merely returning to the rhythm of the universe, the pulse of birth, being, decay, and renewal that nature hums in all living things. The stone does not mourn its shape as it erodes. The river does not regret the paths it once flowed through. And the dying star still leaves its light to travel for thousands of years, shining upon skies seen by those who never knew its name. And you, if you dare to release and let life change you, will also leave behind such a light, a gentle trace of wholeness and aliveness. Carl Jung never spoke of perfection. He spoke of acceptance. He understood that within each of us lives fear, control, and attachment. But when we release our illusions of permanence, we begin to see the true immortality of the soul, the part untouched by time, form, or loss. So if tonight you feel as though you're losing something, know this: nothing is ever truly lost. Its form is merely changing, continuing to live in another way. Like the light of a candle, when it goes out, it doesn't vanish. It becomes warmth, smoke, and shadow, all still here around you. Life does not need you to hold it still. Life only asks that you allow it to continue. And perhaps, in the moment you dare to let go, you will understand this truth. Everything is complete only when it is allowed to change. And then, once you realize that nothing truly lasts forever, something strange happens. Instead of a fear, you feel relief, because suddenly you no longer have to fight against the flow of life. You begin to understand that even within dissolution, there is a hidden order quietly at work. Carl Jung once said, "In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order." That is the moment when the mind stops struggling, stops trying to fix everything in place. Because in truth, it is change itself that gives life its rhythm and breath. If the previous part was an invitation to accept that everything changes, then this one is a gentle whisper in the dark. Maybe it's okay to let it change. Look around you. The work that once made you proud will one day become only a memory. The person you once loved will one morning become a fading face in your recollection. Even youth, the thing you once thought would stay, is flowing away, drop by drop, with every breath you take. And then you realize, life never stands still. It is like a river, always moving, always carrying away and bringing forth something new. If you try to hold the water in your hands, you'll grasp only a few drops. But if you let it flow, you'll hear the gentlest music of nature. The same is true within your inner world, your emotions, your beliefs, The roles you wear, they are changing too. There are versions of you that no longer fit. There are old dreams that must leave so that new ones can arrive. Carl Jung once wrote, "We cannot change anything unless we accept it." This is the most beautiful paradox of growth. You only truly begin to change when you stop trying to. When you accept that life is always in a state of becoming, you no longer fear impermanence. You begin to move in harmony with it. Imagine yourself lying there, listening to the waves beating gently offshore. The wind rustles through the trees. Nothing is fixed. Everything is moving softly, rhythmically, and peacefully, like the breath of the universe. That is impermanence, not loss, but the heartbeat of life itself. People often think peace comes when everything stands still. But no, true peace is when you move with life, yet keep stillness within, like listening to your heartbeat amid the waves, like breathing evenly and smiling gently in the midst of change. Jung once reminded us, life really does begin at 40. Up until then, you are just doing research. He wasn't talking about age, he was talking about transformation. Human beings live in cycles. We try, we fail, we hurt, and then we learn to let go. At some point, we stop resisting. We begin to understand that everything, even what breaks, is part of the soul's evolution. When you understand this, you begin to see change with new eyes. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin to ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" And when your question changes, your energy changes too. What you once called destruction becomes motion. What you once saw as loss becomes space for something new to bloom. Jung once wrote in the Red Book, "The greatest and most important problems of life are all fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved, but only outgrown." That means there are changes you don't need to control or even fully understand. You only need to grow beyond them. When you grow, the problem naturally shrinks like an old coat that no longer fits. And through that process, you begin to feel the peace that change brings. A strange peace, soft yet strong, like the waves, never still, yet never gone. A wave is only water. Water is only the sea, and the sea is the rhythm of life flowing within you. So if today you feel like everything around you is changing too fast, don't be afraid. It isn't the world spinning wildly. It's you, growing. You are being invited to release what has already served its purpose. Remember, impermanence is not the enemy. Impermanence is the teacher. It teaches us to love more deeply, to live more authentically, to be more grateful, because nothing lasts forever. Take a deep breath, feel the air fill your lungs, and then exhale softly. That is the simplest expression of impermanence. Each breath passes, carrying away the old, bringing in the new. No two breaths are the same, and because of that, you are alive. Perhaps true peace is not found in keeping everything the same, but in allowing everything to change. Because only then can we feel the pulse of the universe within our own hearts. As Jung once said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And change is the path that leads you there. Accepting every part of yourself, every phase, every version, and smiling at them all. So tonight, if you hear the wind outside your window or the distant sound of waves, know that they are whispering the same thing. It's okay to let it change. Because when you allow everything to change, you do not lose life. You finally begin to live with it. And then, when you've learned to let the world change around you without fear, you will discover an even deeper layer of peace. The peace that comes with letting go. Because acceptance is only the beginning. Letting go is true freedom. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." When you don't let go, you resist. When you resist, you feed your fear. And in doing so, you unknowingly tighten your grip on the very things you wish to forget. Remember the feeling from before. The river still flowing, the wind still moving, the world changing without asking anyone's permission. Now, in this part, let that current carry you farther, toward the final shore of awareness, where every grasp is released and stillness becomes the highest form of trust. You are lying in bed. There's nothing left to control, nothing left to understand. Only you and your breath. One inhale, one exhale, the ancient rhythm of the universe. Carl Jung once wrote, "As far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being." But you know, that light cannot burn forever, like the sun, which shines each day but eventually descends below the horizon. Not because it dies, but because it needs to rest. So, like the lullaby of the night, allow yourself to rest. When night falls, the sun doesn't die. It simply goes to sleep. Letting go is not losing. Letting go is trusting that even when you do not hold on, life continues. You do not need to strain to keep the world upright. It has always known how to move on its own. Do you remember being a child before sleep would come? You didn't have to do anything. You simply loosened your hands, closed your eyes, and the world kept turning without your help. That is the purest instinct of letting go, a graceful surrender to the laws of nature. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." Perhaps that is why rest does not come easily to us. Because when we let go, when we grow still, the soul begins to speak. And sometimes that silence frightens us. But know this, the fear of silence is simply your soul asking to be seen. You don't have to fight it. You don't have to fill it with noise, with work, social media, or tomorrow's plans. Let silence become your companion. In Jungian psychology, the shadow doesn't disappear when you fight it. It softens only when you invite it to sit beside you and say, "I see you." Try that tonight. When your thoughts begin to rush in, instead of pushing them away, whisper gently, "I see you," and breathe. Each breath is a small act of release. Carl Jung once wrote in the Red Book, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." Awakening is not about opening your eyes wide to see the world. It is when you can close your eyes and still see yourself within. That is the conscious sleep, the sleep of surrender. So tonight, you don't have to hold anything, just breathe. Don't hold on. Don't try to control your dreams. Don't force your mind to be still. Just let it drift, like wind gliding over a lake, like waves kissing the shore, like the night wrapping softly around you. In these quiet moments, you're practicing one of Jung's deepest teachings, integration, the union of light and shadow, of the conscious and the unconscious. Letting go is the bridge to integration. Because when you stop resisting any part of yourself, you become whole. Letting go is the act of one who has understood there is nothing left to fight for, nothing left to prove, nothing left to hold. There is only being, simple, complete, and enough. Carl Jung once said, "Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries." When you let go, you lose nothing. You integrate. You are saying to yourself, "I accept it all. The light and the dark, the voice and the silence, the action and the rest." And in that moment, you become whole. Imagine your inner sun setting. There is nothing sorrowful in this sight. The sky changes color, the light softens, and the world prepares to sleep. The sun does not die. It simply rests. It will return, as you will, in a new tomorrow. So when you close your eyes tonight, remember, everything continues, even when your eyes are closed. Life does not need you to stay awake for it to function. The universe does not need you to hold it together for it to turn. All it asks is that you trust and breathe. One inhale, you receive life. One exhale, you give it back to the universe. And between the two, there is a brief stillness. That stillness is freedom. Carl Jung once wrote, "The soul becomes more spiritual only when it has learned to let go of the world." Tonight, let your soul have that freedom. No need to understand, no need to strive, no need to hold anymore. Just let go and rest. Because sometimes, rest is not the end of awakening, it is where it truly begins. When you learn to let go and rest, you begin to understand a deeper truth. After we release everything, what remains is not emptiness, but the peace of not needing to leave a trace. As if, after the sun has set, the sky doesn't mourn, it simply turns quietly to violet. And there, within that silence, a small voice rises inside you. If I disappear, will anyone remember me? That is the quiet fear almost everyone carries. From childhood, we are taught to leave something behind. An achievement, a name, a legacy. We are taught that to be remembered is proof that we have lived a life of value. But perhaps it is precisely that longing which makes us lose the soul's freedom. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents." This isn't only about parents. It's about all who live out of fear of being forgotten. Those who spend their lives existing in the eyes of others, forgetting the light that burns within. Imagine a leaf falling upon a still pond. In the moment it touches the water, ripples form, then the surface smooths again, reflecting the sky as if no leaf had ever fallen. Yet the leaf was there, and though no one remembers it, it has already changed the pond's motion. So it is with human beings. We long to leave a mark, as the leaf longs to imprint its shape on water. But the surface of water was never made to hold a form. And life itself was never meant to remember. It was meant to flow on. Jung once wrote in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, "A man's life is a series of unconscious acts which reveal his soul more truly than his conscious intentions. It means the deepest part of you does not need to be carved into stone or preserved online. Your soul is etched into every small act of kindness, every honest glance, every loving breath you've ever given to the world. These things do not carry your name, but they carry you. And yet, the ego fears this. It wants to be seen, acknowledged, praised, remembered. It believes that if no one knows of its existence, it doesn't exist at all. Jung called this the illusion of permanence of the self, the illusion that the I must endure forever. We cling to names, to images, to recognition, believing it's the way to defeat time. But in truth, it's the way we chain ourselves to fear. The self is not only the center, but also the whole circumference which embraces both conscious and unconscious. It is the center of this totality. Ion. When you understand this, you realize you do not vanish when others forget you, because you were never just a person. You are a fragment of the whole. You are the echo in someone's laughter, the warmth in the fading memory of a stranger, the ripple of kindness spreading from a small act you once made. We often think being remembered is part of love, but sometimes the purest form of love is the kind that doesn't need to be remembered. Like the mother who once sang her child to sleep, a voice the child will never recall, like the one who plants a tree in the forest, asking for no name to be carved beneath it. That anonymity, that quiet absence of claim, is grace itself. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." To become yourself does not mean to stand out in the world. It means to be true, even when unseen. That is when you touch true freedom, when you no longer need to be remembered to prove your worth. Think about this. Do you remember the face of the stranger who smiled at you yesterday? Perhaps not. But that smile warmed you for a moment, and in that moment, their soul lived on through you. They didn't need to be remembered, and yet they still exist within the energy of kindness. Maybe that is the most beautiful way to exist without leaving a trace. When Jung wrote in the Red Book, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become," he meant that the soul does not need to be enshrined. It only needs to become, to live fully in each moment, not to record it, but to feel it. Because when every moment is lived wholeheartedly, what need is there for eternity? Perhaps it is in anonymity that we find our truest self. For when there is no one left to impress, we stop performing. When there is no one left to witness, we stop fearing. And when there's no one left to remember, we finally begin to exist. Tonight, as you listen to the rhythm of your own breath, let this truth whisper softly within you. It's okay to be forgotten, because when you no longer need to leave a mark, you become as light as a falling leaf, as free as the wind passing through the forest. Even without recognition, you are still part of the great painting of life, quietly, perfectly, eternally. And from this stillness, when you accept that being forgotten is not the end, you are ready to step into the next lesson. One nature has been teaching us all along. The river does not sign its name upon the sea, and the clouds leave no signature on the rain. When you begin to understand that you don't need to be remembered to exist, your mind becomes lighter, like wind brushing through the leaves, leaving no trace, yet moving the whole forest. And that is where the previous chapter has led you, from the fear of being forgotten to the freedom of anonymity. For while humans still fear not being remembered, nature has long mastered the art of namelessness. No river signs its name when it meets the sea. No cloud leaves a mark when it becomes rain. And yet, They are no less magnificent because of it. In the stillness of the night, imagine this. The river, with all its strength and patience, keeps flowing endlessly, not to be praised, but simply because that is its nature. When it merges with the ocean, it does not disappear. It only changes its name. So too, when you stop trying to leave a legacy, you do not vanish. You return to a larger version of yourself. Carl Jung once wrote, "The self is a circle whose center is everywhere and circumference nowhere." We are like the river and the cloud, temporary expressions of a greater whole, the collective unconscious. When you stop asking, "Who will remember me?" you begin to ask a deeper question. What part of me continues to flow through others? Just as clouds leave no name upon the rain, they dissolve, blending into air, returning again in every drop that lands on rooftops, in every dew that gathers on leaves. You may no longer recognize the cloud, yet it is there, nourishing the forest. Perhaps you are the same. Maybe someone no longer remembers your name, but they are living because of something you once gave. A small word, a kind gesture, a moment of true listening. These ripple outward, passing through others, merging into the current of life, becoming something that no one can attribute to a single person. Carl Jung once wrote in Psychology and Alchemy, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." True light needs no name attached. Kindness needs no label of virtue. It only needs to be. That alone is enough. If nature can exist without recognition, why can't we? Perhaps because we have grown used to measuring our worth through the eyes of others. We forget that true value does not lie in titles. It lies in presence. Listen to the whisper carried by the wind. It's okay to be quiet. You're still enough. No one needs to know who you are for you to have an impact. Like the wind, invisible, yet it shapes mountains over time. Like the moon, shining every night, never asking who might be watching. Carl Jung once said, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." It is a gentle reminder that you are not separate from the world. You are part of it, and it is part of you. So anonymity is not the loss of self. It is the expansion of it. When you stop confining yourself to a single name, you become immortal in another way. You become a part of everything. Think of a flower that blooms and withers. It never worries about who will remember its scent. It simply does what life asks. It blooms completely. And in that moment, it has fulfilled its purpose. Even if no one ever knew its name, you are the same. You don't need a monument to prove that you once existed. Your existence is already inscribed in everything you've touched, in a meal you cooked, a hug you gave, the breath you left lingering in the air. Carl Jung once wrote in The Undiscovered Self, "The individual is the make-weight that tips the scales toward the irrational." It means that every individual, however small, shifts the balance of all humanity. No fame is required, no titles are needed, only authenticity. Each of your actions is a grain of sand in the boundless shore, and the sea would not be the same without any one of them. Notice this. Nature is most beautiful when it is silent. No breeze boasts that it is blowing. No star seeks praise to shine. And you too can be beautiful that way, in stillness, in anonymity, in the tranquil presence of simply being. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung. And sometimes who you truly are is not the one remembered, but the one at peace with not needing to be. The one who can love, exist, and feel whole without recognition. Tonight, if you look up and see clouds drifting across the sky, remember, no cloud ever keeps its old shape, and none laments that no one calls its name. Let your mind learn to drift the same way, not bound by names, not afraid of being forgotten, not needing to be verified, because, like the river meeting the sea, every dissolution is also a form of return. And when you accept that nature signs no name, you too begin to live like nature, free, humble, and forever flowing. When you understand that nature doesn't need to sign its name on what it creates, you begin to feel a deeper layer of freedom. The freedom of not needing to perform for anyone. The river doesn't need praise to keep flowing. The cloud doesn't need witnesses to become rain. And the light doesn't need to be named to shine everywhere. So too, you don't need an audience to be yourself. For existence does not need proof. It only needs to be lived fully. There is an old story of an aging musician who lived deep in the forest. Every evening, when the sunlight slanted through the pine trees, he would bring out his old instrument and sit beside the stream. No audience, no stage, only the wind, the water, and the soft hum of wood and string. Someone once asked him, "Who do you play for?" He smiled and whispered, "For no one, yet the music is still full." And within that answer lies a simple kind of enlightenment. When you no longer need anyone to listen, music becomes truly free. Carl Jung once said, "Solitude is for me a fount of healing which makes my life worth living." Sometimes, it is in solitude that we rediscover our most original self, when we are no longer reflected through the eyes of others. We stop trying to become, and in that stillness, we begin simply to be. Modern life traps us in a play with no intermission. We perform for our jobs, our families, social media, and even for the image we hold of ourselves. But as Jung once wrote, the persona is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself as well as others think one is. The persona, the social mask, is necessary to function in the world. But if we forget to ever take it off, we lose sight of the face beneath. Perhaps true freedom doesn't lie in acting well, but in the ability to stop performing, to stop proving, to stop trying so hard to be enough. Because when you stop performing, you don't disappear, you return. Jung wrote in the Red Book, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Indeed, for when the roles fall away, you face yourself entirely, both light and shadow, gentleness and weakness. And only by daring to face yourself do you begin to see who you truly are. Like that old musician in the forest, he needed no audience to affirm his music. His sound wasn't meant to be heard. It was meant to be released. So it is with you. You don't need to be seen to have value. Your worth lies in presence, not perception. When you live for the gaze of others, you borrow meaning. When you live for the truth within, you create it. That is the difference between being noticed and being real. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And you can only become that person when there's no one left to act for, when the noise fades and you are alone with your breath, when you no longer need to be heard, you finally hear yourself. When you no longer need to be seen, you finally exist. Picture that old musician again, in the heart of the forest, his melody rising and blending with the wind, dissolving into the air. No one records it, no one applauds. Yet every note lives completely in that moment, and that is eternity. So when you feel small, unseen, or unrecognized, remember this: you don't need witnesses to have worth. The forest doesn't need an audience to stay green. The sea doesn't need applause to remain vast. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. Carl Jung. Awakening doesn't happen on stage. It happens in silence, not under the spotlight, but in the quiet dark where you meet yourself again. And that is the deepest gift of anonymity, the freedom from performance. We've grown used to living as if always being watched. But tonight, try the opposite. Imagine that no one is watching you. No audience, no judgment, no one waiting for you to be perfect. There's only you and your breath. Tonight, you don't have to prove anything. Just rest. You don't need to prove that you're good enough, strong enough, worthy enough. You always have been. You just forgot. So tonight, let your mind rest, like the river pausing in the sea, like the music dissolving into the wind, like you dissolving into silence, yet still full. The freedom of anonymity is not disappearance. It is the art of existing quietly. When you no longer need to be seen, you become part of something larger, a vast, living stillness where every soul is equal in its namelessness. And perhaps that is the foundation of the inner freedom Jung spoke of, a place where you no longer need to be someone, you only need to be. When you have journeyed through release, felt the freedom of anonymity, and discovered peace within emptiness, you arrive at a new chapter, the chapter of completion. A thing becomes whole only when it comes to an end, just as a song finds its beauty in its final note, and the sunset glows most vividly when light is about to fade. Carl Jung once wrote, "Death is psychologically as important as birth, and, like it, is an integral part of life." Death, or more broadly, every ending, is not life's opposite. It is part of an eternal rhythm we so often forget. To be born, to grow, and then to return. Without endings, there would be no rebirth. Without darkness, light could never define itself. Each day is like a piece of music, and the night is its final refrain. Watch how the day unfolds. Morning opens with purity, noon blazes with vigor, and afternoon softens into stillness. When night arrives, it's like a gentle hand closing a door, softly, yet with certainty. And in that moment, everything feels complete, not because it lasted longer, but because it knew when to stop. In music, without pauses, melody becomes noise. Without rest, rhythm loses its soul. Jung believed human life follows the same pattern, a rhythm of opposites, where each stage must come to rest before the next can bloom. In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order. Carl Jung, beneath the apparent chaos of endings, there is always a silent order rearranging everything. We fear endings only because we cannot yet see that order. When a relationship falls apart, when a job closes, When a dream ends halfway, we often feel we have lost. But if you look deeper, every ending is also a homecoming, a return to yourself, to the inner space you once forgot. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung. And perhaps you can only truly become yourself once you stop trying to prolong what no longer belongs, like a flower that does not cling to its fallen petals, but gathers strength for the seed waiting to sprout. Endings don't come to take. They come to reveal. They reveal the truth that nothing is meant to be held forever, that some things are most beautiful only when viewed from afar after they've passed. Look at a sunset. Its golden light is not as sharp as noon, nor as pure as dawn, but something softer, light mixed with longing and peace. It is beautiful precisely because it is fading. Humans are the same. Only when we face our limits do we learn to truly live. The afternoon of life is just as full of meaning as the morning, only its meaning and purpose are different. Carl Jung. The afternoon of life is no less meaningful than its morning. It simply carries a different light. Youth teaches us to act. Evening teaches us to understand. When you know that all things have their time, you no longer fear endings. You begin to honor them. A good piece of music is not great because it lasts. It's great because it ends well. Life is the same. You cannot keep adding notes out of fear of silence, for silence gives sound its meaning. Life doesn't need to go on forever. It only needs to be lived fully, in its own rhythm. The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. Carl Jung. There is no single formula for happiness and no single way to end. Each of us has our own rhythm. Some close with tears, others with laughter, and some with a quiet breath. But in truth, all endings are a return. Sometimes you just need to see things like a sunset, where the light fades not because it dies, but because it has fulfilled its purpose. And night is not the end of day, but the rest of light. As far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being. Carl Jung. Light always returns, but to return, it must rest. And humans too. Sometimes the greatest courage is not in continuing, but in stopping peacefully. Each day you live is a melody in motion. When night comes, let it end gently. No need for more words. No need to hold on. No need to analyze. Just listen as the final note fades into silence. Because in that moment, when the sound disappears, you can finally hear your true self. Each day is like a piece of music, and the night is its final refrain. And when you allow the night to do its work, you are practicing one of Jung's deepest truths. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Endings may hurt, but within that pain lies the light of awakening. Like the last song before sleep, it asks nothing of you but surrender. For wholeness doesn't come from adding more. It comes from knowing when to stop. So tonight, let the music of this day close softly. Rest, for tomorrow, a new song will rise, born from this very silence. Kiban ja hiu jok kai jepkwa hoiket, bansi thai rangsu ket thuj khong chon la dau chamhet, malang get huat kwa buong te, kang hung gesi, ki kep lai ban hat kwa min, khong hai vi hokkan i tuong, Ma vi ho biet rang im lang chin la not nha koi kong. Tu kwan khak ai ban bad jau ho kach song nu mot ngoi biet chap nhan chuki. Let it end gently. Every ending is also a beginning. Kal Yong Tong Noi. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Kong ko su thok tin nau janma kong jikwa jau jon. Va joy ki ching noi jau kwa ke thuch la loi moi goi ban buok sang mot geai joan moi. Ting yeu tan vo. Kong viek tai joy ban be roik sa. Tat ka kong fai do hiu kwa mat mat. Ma la chu ki kwa su song jang luan chuyen. Gyong hu mua thai la hai thui triu ru jen huang cho cho mod buoi sang khak. New trong fan truok. Ban jan thai juok ve jep kwa viets mot ngai troi kwa wa jem jen. Ti gyo jai. Hain hin sao hon. Lam sao jet song chung su ke thuch ma hong jau. Ma hong so. Ma van tron ven. Kau tra loi nam on he thua chapnaha. What you resist persists. Kal Yong. Nung gi ban chong lai se ton tai lao hon. Ki ban bao viu vao gio gi jo mot moi kwan he. Mot vi tri mot hin an ban than ban jang cho no quien gio kien ban. Nung ki ban jon nahan su ke thuch mot kach diu dang. Ban tro than nguai chu jong kua kuok choi min. Kong fai vi ban man me hon ma vi ban ja hiu kui luat. Jung tin rang vu tru van han theun guyen tak joy cook sang toi song chet but jau ket thuch. Chi khi hai chuch nai hoa hop. Kon nanguai moi jat jen tuhan the. Vive. Song nung e si kwa su ket thukla. Biet nihin thai kai jep ngai trong kwan khak tan bien. Hoi tun ho le mot moi tin jang kwa. Luk no ket thuk. Ban kod kem thai tan vo. Nung ki thoi gian throi ji. Ban han ra rang jio tan vo jo jan de ban kach yeu chin min. Kash nhan biet giatri. Kak song chan dat hon. Neu moi tin ai kong ket thuk. Ban se mai kong truong tan. Jung tung viet. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Moi kwok gap go ju cholido. Va khi hai lin honcham vaun hao. Du chi trong mot kwan khach. Ka hai jo bien joy. Nung nu moa fan ung hoa hok. Mot ki hoan tat. No fai lang xuong. Kong fai vi het giatri. Ma vi no ja lam chong hiem vu kwa min. Trong kong viek. Trong kwok song. Trong moa vai troma bantung gyu. Kong vai. Ko luk ban fai roi ji kong fai vi dat bai. Ma vi ban jan trong tan hon vai tro jo. Nhu mot nghe si sau ki hoan than buk tran. Ho kong de kumai ve len lop mau jang ko. Boy ki jo. Kai jep se bien mat. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Kal Yong. Tro than chin min kong chila tim ra jiu ban yeu. Ma kon la biet ki nao nendang. Dung je bao ton kai jep. Dung je kong lam ton thuong jiu tong kui gia. Vi kai jep dat su kong nam trong viets giu. Ma nam trong viek cho feb no roi ji jung luk. Let it end gently. Hai ye moi tu ke thuts mot kach nhen hang. Hu chiek la li akang ki gyo kekwa. Kong guang lai. Kong oan than. No biet rang hiem vu kwa min jang song. Va suroi chuong chila hang trin tro ve voi jat me. Gong nu ve. Ki mot chuong joy kep lai. Ban kong thuk su mat ji. Ban chi jang tro ve voi ban the. Jung tung noi ve tien tring individuation. Qua trin kon nanguoi hop nhat kach man roi rakua tam hong jitro. Nen nguyen ven. Jalam George Giojo. Moi fan trong ban ju pai. Ko luchet jimotlan. Jafan sao hon jok sinra. The old must die before the new can be born. Va jo chin la ban chat kua moi ke thuk. Song hung hesi kwa su ke thut singhia. La biet kach buong voi long bieton. Lamim koi ki kan kua jong lai. Kong vi ben wo kam, ma vi ben biet mot kan khach jang mo. Kong pai moi ke thuk ju ko hao. Nung moi ke thuk ju ko ingia. Tham chi. Ingia jo joy kichi la loin hak rangban van kon jang song va juok song la mojak an. The afternoon of life must also have its own significance and cannot merely be a pitiful appendage to life's morning. Carl Jung, Giai Joan Sao Kwa Kuok Joy, Nhung Chong Koi, Hong Pai Phan Tan, Mala Nua Kon Lai Kwa Buktran, Vi Neu Kong Ko Chiota, I se Bietran Trong Bin Ming, Neu Kong Ko Chiali, I se Hieu Sao Sak Gia Tri Kwa Gap Go, Vainen, Jung So Ki Jeo Ge Jo Jang Kep Lai, Jung Ko Niu Gyu Nhung Khan Kwa Jan Jong, Dai Bao Jo. Hai Jungian mot khut, hit sao, va noi loi camon vi jeo jo jan tung jen, camon vi no jang yup ban nhin te chin min rohon, va roi hai je no raji nhin hu hoi tho. Every ending is also a beginning, jemnai, kiban kep lejoi mad, hai koi jola ngile kwa mot ngesi. Ban kong ngu jekwen, ma je trao choban than ko hoi bat jaulai. Kung hu mat troi moi ngai faila, jen ngai mai ko the mok lai trong mot hin dang moi. Vithe, hai je moi thu ke thuk tat diu dang. Hong ko gi kan voi. Hong ko gi kan niu, chicken tho. Let it end gently. Every ending is also a beginning. Hai je kau noi ai ru ban jemnai, no mot ban hak kwai kung. Lang le tan vao hong gian, hung bang mai trong tam hon nanguainga. When you have learned to live like an artist of endings, to let things close gently, to release without fear, the final lesson is rest. Not rest because you are tired, but rest because you are complete, like a painter who, after the final brushstroke, does not add or erase, but simply sits in stillness, gazing at the work with a quiet smile, for he knows everything is enough. There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. Ecclesiastes 3:1. When Carl Jung spoke of the natural cycles of the soul, he did not mean escaping darkness, but living through it, then allowing it to pass. Just as night doesn't come to extinguish the light, but to give it rest. Even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness. And the word happy would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness. Carl Jung, if you have walked through sorrow, loss, and the closing of chapters, if you have learned that endings are not enemies, then now, let your mind sleep, because rest is the final art of surrender. Imagine an old man. Each night before sleep, he turns off the lamp, slowly, without fear. The light fades, yet his face remains calm. He knows darkness is not the absence of light, but the place where light rests to be reborn stronger. As far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being. Carl Jung. He understands that for life's lamp to keep burning, it must sometimes go out, just as the heart needs the pause between beats, and breath needs the quiet between inhale and exhale. Without pauses, there can be no rhythm. Tonight, let everything end like a song. Sleep well. Your life is a composition. Each day a short movement, each act a note, each memory a melody. And when night arrives, let the song close on its own. Don't force another note. Just listen as the last sound fades into silence. Jung spoke of the rhythm of existence, saying that the soul functions like nature itself, with openings and closings, light and shadow. If you can live within that rhythm, you will no longer fear any ending, not of a day, not of a relationship, not even of life itself. Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. Carl Jung wholeness doesn't come from rejecting sadness or denying fatigue. It comes from embracing both light and darkness, knowing that each is part of the same journey, and only then can rest be complete. The old man turns off his lamp each night, not because he abandons the light, but because he trusts it. That trust gives him peace, the faith that everything will return, that tomorrow the sun will rise, the birds will sing, and his heart would still beat quietly within him. So too, when you close your eyes tonight, do not think you are leaving life behind. Think instead that you are giving it a chance to renew itself in peace, because even sleep is a form of rebirth. Breathe in, breathe out. Each breath is a small death and a new birth. You don't need to do anything, just breathe. Tonight, you don't need to fix, to try, or to understand. You only need to rest. Jung once described individuation, the process of becoming whole, as a path not outward, but inward. And at the end of that path lies not victory, not achievement, but silence. At the end of the day, we must let go of who we think we are supposed to be and embrace who we are. Rest is when you stop trying to become someone, when you no longer need to prove, to explain, to fight, when you simply accept yourself exactly as you are. In that stillness, you realize nothing ever truly ends. What we call the end is only the pause between two pulses of life, like a song that must rest for the next note to rise, like the night that must darken before dawn. Look back once more. The beauty of endings taught us that endings are necessary. Living as the artist of endings taught us to release with gratitude. And now, the end as rest teaches us to accept completely, not through reason, but through breath. So tonight, as you lie down, let your body dissolve into the sheets, your mind loosen, your breath slow, nothing to hold, nothing to chase, only the peace of presence. Good night. The voice fades like a breeze drifting through your thoughts. The music softens like moonlight dissolving into shadow. And in that silence, you hear the deepest truth Jung ever believed. The soul becomes infinite when it surrenders. The soul becomes infinite when it surrenders. Not because it has lost, but because it has become whole. Tonight, let your soul surrender, not to the world, but to stillness itself. And in that moment, you will understand an ending is never disappearance. It is the universe's way of saying good night. When the night closes and you have learned how to rest in endings, something else quietly begins to emerge. Emptiness. It does not announce itself, nor arrive with noise. It simply lingers, like the universe taking a long, deep breath after letting go, after saying goodbye. There's often a space, a gap between what has ended and what has not yet begun. That space is where we often feel most lost, and yet it is also where the deepest healing takes place. In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order. Carl Jung, from the chaos of loss. A silent order is forming, but you will only sense it when you dare to stay still within the emptiness, when you stop trying to fill it with sound, with work, or with memories of the past. It is like a winter garden, bare branches, frozen earth. And yet, beneath the snow, seeds sleep quietly, waiting for spring to wake them. There will be nights when you feel something missing, a person, an opportunity, a warmth that once lived in your heart. You look around and find yourself alone, as if the whole world has moved on and left you standing there. But perhaps it is precisely in that moment that the light begins to find its way in. Maybe emptiness isn't the enemy. Carl Jung once wrote, "The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct acting from inner necessity." The creative mind plays with the objects it loves. The new is never born through control. It arises through the freedom to play. And to play, you must first make space. Emptiness is not loss. It is the room where the new can be born. Think back to the last time you cleared out an old room, when it was full of clutter. There was no place for anything else. But once you began to remove things, once the empty space appeared, light began to enter, and suddenly the room felt larger, cleaner, softer. The human soul is much the same. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside? Dreams. Who looks inside? Awakes. Carl Jung. Emptiness is the soul's invitation to return inward. When you stop searching outside, in applause, approval, or fading relationships, you begin to hear your own breath again. That is the first moment of awakening, not loud, not brilliant, just a quiet realization. I am still here. Jung believed that no one could truly evolve without a temporary dissolution of the ego. Just as the snake must shed its skin, or the seed must crack to sprout, we too must pass through that space in between, where the old self has fallen away and the new self has not yet arrived. There is no birth of consciousness without pain. Carl Jung. And that pain, if welcomed, becomes expansion. When you accept emptiness, you are no longer its victim. You become its witness. You begin to watch, to sense, to trust that rebirth is happening quietly beneath the surface. There is something strange and beautiful that happens when you sit in silence long enough. You begin to hear things you never noticed before. The wind outside the window, the heartbeat within you, the hum of life still flowing through everything. You realize that emptiness is not silent. It simply speaks in another language, the language of presence. At times I feel like a ship that has been stripped of all its masts, drifting on the sea of the unconscious. Carl Jung. When all your anchors are gone, you think you are lost, but in truth, you are being carried home, toward the center of yourself, like a ship adrift in the night. Only when all surrounding lights are gone can you finally see the stars. Emptiness does not come to wound you. It comes to pause you, to make you stop, to breathe, to realize that not everything needs to be filled with meaning. Not every loneliness must be fixed. Sometimes, simply sitting beside it, as you would sit beside a quiet friend, is enough. Jung once said, "The greatest and most important problems in life are all fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved, but only outgrown." Emptiness, too, cannot be solved. You can only grow beyond it. And when you do, you will see that the emptiness you feared was, all along, your gentlest teacher. So tonight, If you feel a hollow within, remember this: not every absence is a loss. Sometimes the universe removes the old simply to make room for something larger, something you cannot yet imagine. Like the winter garden awaiting spring, you too are resting in the season of your soul. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let your heart become empty for a while. Maybe emptiness isn't the enemy. It is simply the space where light enters. And within that light, you will realize nothing is ever truly lost. Everything is merely returning to the quiet from which it first came. Once you've learned to sit still within the emptiness, you begin to realize the next truth. Emptiness only becomes fertile when you learn how to forget. Because sometimes what hurts us isn't the wound itself, it's the memory of it. And only when you dare to let that memory dissolve can peace find a place to enter. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung taught that the unconscious will rule our lives until we bring it into awareness. But awareness does not mean clinging. Even understanding must sometimes be released, so it doesn't harden into the weight of memory. When you let go of what once hurt you, you are not betraying your past. You are freeing it. There are wounds that cannot heal by being remembered. You can replay the images again and again, the words, the faces, the moments that still tighten your chest. But the more you remember, the longer the pain survives. It's like a room that never brightens because you refuse to turn off an old light. No new light can enter while you keep holding on to what has already burned out. Breathe in, breathe out. Imagine inhaling and exhaling slowly. Each breath in brings new air. Each breath out releases what no longer serves you. Life breathes in the same way. It can only continue through letting go. In nature, nothing is kept forever. Leaves fall to enrich the soil. Waves retreat so the ocean can rest. Winter arrives so spring can be born again. And we, too, must learn to forget the seasons that have passed, so the soul has space to welcome new growth. Jung wrote in Modern Man in Search of a Soul, the process of individuation means becoming an individual, and insofar as individuality embraces our innermost, last, and incomparable uniqueness, it also implies becoming one's own self. Becoming yourself is not always about gaining more. Often, it is about shedding. It is forgetting the definitions others gave you. It is peeling off layers of expectation, judgment, and stories you once mistook for me. When these fade, what remains is your purest essence, who you were before the world gave you a name. Forgetting is not losing. Forgetting is releasing. Like a room that glows only after the lamp is turned off, you do not lose light. You make way for a gentler, truer one. And when you forget your pain, you are not erasing memory. You are simply choosing not to define yourself by it anymore. In that silence, something new can begin. The greatest and most important problems in life are all fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved, but only outgrown. Carl Jung. There are things reason cannot solve. You cannot analyze sorrow into clarity. You cannot unravel every thread of the past. The only way forward is to grow beyond it. And to grow, you must leave it behind. like a kite that must cut its string before it can soar. Think of memory as words written in sand. You don't need to erase them. The wind will. Your task is simply to stand still and watch. One day, you'll realize that forgetting does not make you weaker. It makes you more fluid, like a river flowing around stones, needing no victory, only movement. The pendulum of the mind oscillates between sense and nonsense, not between right and wrong. Carl Jung. The mind swings endlessly between meaning and meaninglessness, between what it grasps and what it cannot. But when you learn to forget, you stop needing to understand. You allow yourself to not know, to not solve, to not force. And in that surrender, peace appears, not because you found an answer, but because you no longer require one. Some wounds heal only when you stop trying. When you stop trying to get over it, you finally move through it. When you stop forcing yourself to remember, you start to live again. And in that very moment, life returns, soft, quiet, like a breeze through a curtain newly opened. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe with life. Let each breath remind you that you do not need to hold everything so tightly. Forgetting is not betrayal. It is returning things to the flow of nature. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for a memory is let it rest. Jung believed the unconscious is a place of renewal. Only when we release control can the buried things within rise and transform. Forgetting is the soul's way of pruning, clearing fallen leaves so the soil can nourish what's next. When your mind softens its grip on pain, new energy begins to move again. What you resist persists. Carl Jung. Whatever you fight will stay. But when you accept, when you breathe, when you allow memories to dissolve like rain into earth, they lose their power. They become foundation, quiet, rich and fertile, where new life will grow. So tonight, if an old memory comes, let it arrive and let it go. Don't chase it. Don't cling to it. Just breathe with it, as you breathe with the rhythm of the universe. Breathe in, breathe out, and one day, you'll notice what you once struggled to forget no longer matters, because something new has already begun to bloom in the space it left behind. When you have learned to forget in order to make space for the new, another deeper layer begins to open. Silence, not the emptiness of longing, nor the wind of release, but a pure stillness, where the mind ceases to move and the soul begins to breathe deeply. Jung once wrote, "The soul needs silence more than the body needs rest." Silence is not merely the absence of sound, it is the absence of striving. It is the moment when you no longer try to understand, no longer try to heal, no longer demand answers from the world. Because some nights don't need solutions, they only need silence. For in that silence, the universe whispers things that language can never reach. Silence is the oldest language of the soul. Before words existed, before humans learned to speak, everything in nature communicated through rhythm, through breath, through motion, through the beating of hearts. And when you sit still, resisting nothing, you begin to hear that rhythm again, the heartbeat of the cosmos. Silence is the heartbeat of the universe. Imagine this. You are lying in the middle of the night, and every sound around you begins to fade. No traffic, no voices, only the gentle touch of wind against the window. And in that moment, you realize silence is not frightening. It's not emptiness. It is the space where everything is resting. Breathe in, breathe out. As your breath merges with the silence, you become part of its rhythm. You are no longer the listener. You are an instrument in the great symphony of existence. Carl Jung once said, "In each of us there is another whom we do not know. He speaks to us in dreams and tells us how differently he sees us from the way we see ourselves." In silence, that other, the deeper self within you, begins to speak, not in words, but in sensations, a warmth across your chest, a quiet tear, a small, effortless smile. These are signs that you are reconnecting with your soul, not through thought, but through presence. Modern life has made us forget the value of silence. We fear it, and we fill it with noise, conversations, music, notifications, endless chatter. But the more we fill it, the farther we drift from ourselves. Jung called this the noise of the ego, the part of us that keeps talking to prove it exists, while the soul simply waits for us to sit down and listen. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Carl Jung, silence is the doorway to the soul, but to pass through it, you must be brave enough not to speak, not to act, not to think. That is the hardest test, because we've been taught that only doing brings meaning. Yet Jung believed the opposite. The deepest meaning is born in moments of stillness. Think of nature. The moon does not need to make a sound to shine. The sea does not need to shout to know it has waves. The tree does not need to speak to keep growing each morning. This universe moves in silence, a silence brimming with life. And so do you. When you stop trying to be memorable, lovable, worthy, you begin to truly live. Not because someone sees you, not because you've proven yourself, but because your existence alone is already enough. It's okay to be quiet. You are still enough. That phrase feels like a soft hand on your shoulder, reminding you that you have nothing left to prove. Silence is not the absence of value. It is the full presence of the soul. When Jung described individuation, the integration of the conscious and the unconscious, he never portrayed it as a loud process. It was quiet, slow, meditative. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung, and to become who you truly are, you must be still enough to hear the voice within. No one else can lead you there. Silence is the only map you'll ever need. Tonight, as you lie down, don't try to understand anything more. Don't force meaning onto the day. Just be silent. Because perhaps what you've been searching for has been here all along. You just weren't quiet enough to hear it. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Carl Jung. But pain does not last forever. When silence touches it, pain melts like morning mist in the light. No analysis, no labels, no resistance, only breath. Now, let your thoughts drift and sleep. The voice fades. The breath slows. The music dissolves like smoke into the night. And in that moment, you realize silence is not the end. It is the lullaby of the universe. Tonight, you don't need to know anything more. Just listen. Listen to your breath, to the heartbeat of the universe moving with you. And in that soundless space, you'll see Everything is already at peace. And now, as night has fully fallen, every question dissolves into the silence between two breaths. You have passed through the 4 doors of the mind, where eternity reveals itself as illusion, where names lose their necessity, where endings become art, and where emptiness turns into a gift. In this quiet, you understand, nothing ever truly disappears. Everything is simply changing form, returning to its origin. Outside, the wind still stirs the leaves, a reminder that the world is breathing with you. But within, something begins to bloom, small, gentle, alive. It is the voice of a deeper self, where memory begins to melt, and forgetting becomes as sweet as the first breath of morning. Sleep now, for when you awaken in the next chapter, you will not merely dream, you will begin to remember yourself